the quicker that you can compound that. If you were to take So welcome to the Ryan Magic Show. Today I'm here with my best friend in the whole world, Ricky Baldasso, who's an absolute fucking legend and the most, I'm really excited for this chat, man, because we talk all the time and we have these beautiful, deep conversations. And there's been many times where we've thought, if this was put onto a podcast, it would be pretty amazing. And now is the time. So thanks for coming on, brother.
Man, I'm excited. And if our conversation today is anything like our usual conversations, it's going to be magic. So I'm excited for it.
I feel like it's going to be a mix of fun, spontaneity, depth. Cool, man. So
who knows? We might even get on the stage. We might even get on the stage and celebrate.
Yeah. So dude, you are someone that's a marketer by trade, but you've got such a wealth of wisdom when it comes to life, spirituality, fulfillment, joy, relationships, and health, and even family dynamics. So there's so many different places we can take this conversation. I just want to kick off by hearing what's something of recent that you've kind of been mulling over and kind of been getting, like, what's the most exciting recent personal development realization that you've had?
I feel like I've been really fascinated by intuition lately, and just anything in the realm of intuition, and especially as it applies to business. So I'm carrying my amethyst crystal ball right now, which has pretty much been by my side every second of the day for the last week or week and a half since I bought it. And I'm just fascinated by the kind of magic that can come from intuition, and how it seems to be right now in general in people's lives, but then especially in business, like not really something that's utilized. So I'm like really fascinated by that, and just kind of like tapping into that as often as possible.
Yeah, cool, man. So something random came up for me when you were sharing that I think's like a really cool transformation you've had in your life that I'd like to speak to. And that is your ability to be like a really strong man, but then be really in touch with your feelings and be really open to surrender and express, while also maintaining a lot of strength. Like you're someone that really knows who they are and loves themselves at a deep level. And I've obviously met heaps of people that are into personal development and coaches and successful entrepreneurs and stuff. And I think a lot of it's like, I think you're a really unique man. Like you're a really self-assured dude. And as a result, you give yourself permission to feel. So I'd love for you to talk to what the journey's been like of you actually owning that part of yourself over the last few years and integrating into your lifestyle, and the impact that it's had on your life.
Sure, man. I think a lot of it transformed when I met my partner, Carolina, who's a healer and just like really into spirituality. So, it was probably like at least 5 years that I was like into personal development, probably 5, 6, 7 years, where I was, going to Tony Robbins events, and I was just, attending webinars, online courses, listening to audio programs, reading books about personal development. And that served me a lot in building confidence, in kind of, starting my business and things like that. But it was when I kind of got more into like healing and spirituality, when I really opened up, and where I kind of became more who I am, like my authentic self, my unique expression of God. So yeah, I think that like exploring some of those healing methods and doing certain ceremonies to kind of let things flow through me as opposed to trying to control um control things. And I think that that's been a big part for me in expressing myself, is that all the personal development work I did, it was kind of beneficial, but it was also kind of just feeding my ego. It was like, I want to achieve more. I want to be more successful. I want to be more wealthy. I want to be more healthy. And it was because I wanted to portray this image of who I am as like the ultimate Ricky. Whereas now I've kind of come to realize that my idea of the ultimate Ricky now is not necessarily the most successful, wealthy, healthy, etc. It's more like, in the moment, who do I choose that I want to be? Maybe it's a Monday and I don't want to be the most successful, wealthy business person, but I want to be the best partner, or I want to be the best friend, or I want to be the most connected to myself that I can be. So it's kind of exploring that healing journey and that journey of, what does my soul want, as opposed to what does my ego want? And that's kind of more looking inward as opposed to looking outward as to, what will people think of me if I express myself this way? And there's kind of the program of like, if I'm seen to be more healthy, successful, wealthy, then that's going to make me happy. But I think ultimately what makes you fulfilled is how you see yourself. And when you see yourself a certain way and it's like, this is who I want to be, and then when you're living in alignment with that, that's where I think that where the joy and the fulfillment really comes from.
It's really beautifully articulated, man. And
Thank you.
one thing that I really experienced from you when we lived together, I don't even remember how long ago it was, maybe 6 months, something like that. And we're in the same house. You really expressed yourself authentically. And that for me was the big, that was the season through which I started to learn to be okay to be seen in my emotions. It was a season where it started, still a work in progress for me. But I would remember times where you and your partner, Caro, would be having an argument and you'd just be screaming. And I'd just be like, from this, from like a place of epitomizing what society would think about that, judging it, like on initially, like, oh, whoa, they're arguing and everyone can just hear it. And, it's just out in the open. Whereas people and myself would usually be ashamed of that. If Danny, my ex, was wanting to argue with me, I'd be embarrassed about the fact that there's an argument, which is obviously a rejection of the truth of who I am, which is someone that's imperfect. So it really sounds like you, and I've seen it, have learned to love yourself in all of the different colors that you have. They're like, the beautiful, like, yeah, I'm killing it in life. And then also like, I'm an absolute fucking mess today and I'm feeling like a piece of shit. And all I want to do is just sit on the couch and watch TV. I know I've found it quite difficult at times to even give myself permission to do that. And then if I'm just chilling at home, I would kind of like not post on social media at that day because it's like, oh, that's a less successful looking setup. And so I really admire that you're just able to accept all parts of yourself. So how does it feel different? Like, how has the experience been since you've been more able just to be yourself for who you are? And what impact has it had on your success, if anything?
Yeah, man, when you were saying that, just something popped into my mind, which was just the word freedom. It's like, nothing feels more free to me than to just express myself as I am right now. Because anything else is restriction. It's like, I'm feeling something, but I'm portraying something different to how I'm feeling. Now, I think that sometimes a feeling can be like a program. It can be like a subconscious pattern, and maybe not necessarily like true soul, authentic expression. So there's a little bit of discernment that can be made there. But I think generally, I like to honor how I'm feeling, and I like to try and create the feelings that I want. But if I sometimes just feel down, or I feel angry, or I feel upset, I kind of feel like that's not my kind of soul's expression, but it's like, it's a program. And I kind of feel like often the way to heal that program and get rid of that, like those low vibes controlling you, it's to express it. Because if it's inside you, if you're feeling angry and it's inside of you, then if you don't want to be an angry person, if you don't want to be someone that's consistently expressing anger, then if you just get it out, then it's out of you, and then it's not controlling you anymore. And then you can choose who you want to be from a place of like, okay, the emotion's out. Now I kind of got more of a blank canvas. Who do I now want to be? So I kind of feel like, like you mentioned that, when we're living together, if me and my partner ever had an argument, that, I would be quite expressive. And we kind of have a agreement that we want to get emotion out, because we know that if I'm angry and I'm suppressing it, or if I'm frustrated and I'm suppressing it, or if, my partner's feeling unsupported and she's suppressing it, or whatever it might be, if it's suppressed and not expressed, it will eventually get expressed, but probably in a more like chaotic kind of way where there's not that like, mutual
or passive aggressiveness,
understanding.
right?
Exactly. So I think it's actually really healthy to let it out. And in a relationship, when you both have awareness of who you each are in your like authenticity and in your soul, you don't get as triggered by those kind of short-term expressions of like low vibes or, whatever the emotion might be, because it's like, I could just get some anger out and like yell and scream. And when that's happening, if Caroline is like really in her kind of power zone and like higher, consciousness, she knows, okay, this is a temporary expression of a program that is in the subconscious that's coming out now. So my partner's healing, and it's actually bringing us closer together, because then when it's out, we can connect back on the soul level, as opposed to running these programs and thinking that we have a connection. So, and it's the same in reverse. Like I've learned that when my partner is expressing something, rather than taking it, personally, and, I'm not perfect, and sometimes I do, but my intention is always to kind of zoom out and be like, okay, right now she's hurt. There's an inner child inside of her that experienced some trauma when she was growing up, that instilled a certain program and pattern to try and create some safety, to try and get some love. And that's all coming out right now. And if I can just like hold the space and be like a strong presence to be there and help her feel safe, it'll come out. And then after that, I think there's there's not as many, how can I express this? When you are with a woman and she's just expressing anger, and you just hold your like presence and you let her know with your energy that you're just there for her and you love her, even in that kind of craziness or that expression, that builds so much trust, especially if you just aren't judging and you're unconditional with your love. The woman will feel like, okay, he loves me for all of me, not just for when I'm, being this way. And I think that overcomes some of the biggest insecurities that people have, is they want to, they feel like they're loved because of their ego or how they present themselves. But when you can unconditionally love them and know who they are, and know that their behavior isn't their identity, and that it's just like a short-term thing, then you can, they feel like they know who they are, and they don't lose themselves as well and thinking, oh my God, I'm an angry person. It's like, no, you expressed anger because it was a program. Now it's out, and I remember who you are, and it helps them remember who they are. And then there can be that connection on the soul level. So it's a little rant about all of that. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So what do you think was the difference then between your current relationship and being able to see Caro for her soul, and not identifying her and putting her into a category based on her behavior and judging her based on her behavior? What do you think the difference was between your ability to do that with Caro and not your ability to do that with your previous partner, who was also my sister, Ali?
Yeah. I think it just is like, everything's a mirror, right? Like your ability to relate with other people is just a direct reflection of how you relate with yourself. So in the past, in previous relationships, when I didn't have that, as much of that ability to you know, be more empathetic and understanding, and to be able to discern between, you know, what is the truth of who they are and what is a program of their ego, is it just comes back to the mirror. So my ability to not judge myself as much, my ability to be more loving and compassionate towards myself, and also just my certainty in knowing who I am. Like, one of the beauties of this human experience is we get to decide who we are. No one can ever tell you who you are unless you believe them. You get to decide for yourself. And if I decide I am a loving, caring, compassionate, wise, powerful man, then if I'm ever acting in any way other than that, I can just decide that is not who I am. And then I can say, this is who I am. So having that compassion for myself and just deciding, like, I know who I am. This is who I am. Anything outside of this, it's not who I am. Unless, you know, and I think it's important to be flexible in who you are and to always, you know, in the present moment, decide who you are. But if you act in a way and you have a behavior where you decide that isn't who you are, that is like a program, because you can feel that it's not like your soul's expression, but it's just happening because of some trauma you had as a kid, or like whatever it is, some insecurity. When you have that self-awareness, then you can start to reflect that in other things that you see, whether it's a partner, a friend, or family member, business partner, whatever it might be. And I think that level of compassion, that lack of judgment, it really empowers people, because I think it's a rare thing for people to not identify with their behaviors. I think that, you know, people can be very judgmental of themselves. And I definitely have been a lot in my life as well. But now I'm really, you know, setting a strong intention and doing my best to be compassionate and to decide this is who I am. This, you know, was a behavior that wasn't me. And then to put effort and energy into not letting that control me anymore. So I'm very like, I like to be very proactive with my healing. Like, as soon as I notice something coming up, you know, luckily my partner is a healer. And, you know, before I was with Carolina, I had, you know, other healers that I would work with, but I was very proactive with, like, this happened. I don't want it to happen anymore. I didn't feel in control when it was happening. So I want to have a healing to heal the root cause of this behavior so that it doesn't happen again. And it's not something that you can necessarily like foresee, where it's like, I know in the future that this is going to come up, this is going to come up, and this is going to come up, and I'm going to like heal it. You kind of, to some extent, can do that, but I like to just kind of handle them as they come up. And, you know, perfect example is yesterday, I was actually feeling kind of down, and I didn't know what the emotion was. I couldn't label it. And then I just said to Carolina, I was like, babe, I'm feeling down. I feel like I need to have a healing session. I feel like I need to cry. I need to release some emotion. It was kind of like an intuitive sense. I couldn't even really put my finger on it. But then when we went into the healing, I realized that the root cause of that feeling was the feeling of being trapped. And then, you know, in the process we went through, which is called the completion process, we essentially went back, like, let my intuition go back to the first time I felt that feeling. And it was actually being in the womb of my mother, feeling trapped. And I've heard a lot of people say before that they've gone back to being in the womb. I personally never experienced that. But yesterday was the first time that it's like the first like resonating kind of moment in my subconscious where I felt trapped was when I was in the womb. Then we went through this healing. I was like crying, I was screaming, I was letting out all this emotion. I was like punching the mattress and going crazy. And what I think is interesting is that if anyone had seen me without the context of knowing what was going on, they might have thought I was crazy. They might have thought that like I'd just seen someone die, or that I was like just crazy. But then I release it all. We go through the rest of the process, and then we just go for a walk and life's back to normal. We're just having a normal conversation. I'm like, oh my God, I feel so much better now. I feel like so much more in my like authentic space and not being controlled by this, like these low vibes. And that's something I just like, if there's anything I want to encourage people, it's to realize that you're allowed to be crazy. And I actually encourage it, but do it in a container where you're healing, and then after that, you can be empowered to be whoever you want to be. And if you want to be crazy in your authentic expression, then you can be crazy in your authentic expression. So
I
yeah,
love
that's
that.
yeah, that's what's up.
I had an inside joke with Crystal, one of my good friends, who was the last actual guest on the podcast. I did an interview with her earlier today, and we had this inside joke that if you were doing a healing, like a really hardcore healing on the street, but you were mega aware and like witnessing yourself healing, you could be full like convulsing and just like screaming and going crazy, and someone comes up and they're like, "Fuck, you okay?" And then you just snap instantly out of it, and you're like, "Sorry, what's up?" He's going to like normal human form, and you're like, "Oh, it's just healing." And then they're like, "Oh, okay, on your way." You go straight back into some crazy healing, because it's like you can witness yourself. It's just like you're choosing to embody the great,
Yeah.
and therefore,
And yeah, that's actually a really great point that I want to just, emphasize, is that when I am like fully channeling and embodying that expression of that emotion that I want to release, right? Originally, it was just like fully taking me over, and that was like the experience. But now I feel like as my consciousness has just developed slightly more and more each, month or whatever, now it's at the point where I'm fully channeling and embodying that emotion and releasing it. But there's a little bit of awareness that is outside of that, that is like, it is like, Monday, 3 p.m., and there's neighbors that can probably hear you going crazy. And it's kind of funny, like just observing, and it's like God's humor, because God is everything and God is all awareness. So every kind of human that is embodying a certain personality and expressing themselves a certain way, that is like an expression of God. But then if you zoom out, God is kind of like aware that you're just like an actor in a play that's kind of like taking on this character. And it's funny. So when you have that awareness simultaneously, it actually makes the healing process really fun. I could be screaming and like releasing, like legitimately feeling the peak of anger, and simultaneously having this awareness of how like hilarious it is.
I love that this came up in this chat, because it's so true. It's so true that that's like this whole life is just we're just choosing to forget certain elements so that we can be attached to others and just live this crazy, fully um, present experience in these different combinations of life. Oh, that's funny, man. But it's really powerful. And I don't know, like you said, it's pretty rare that people don't judge others based on their behavior, myself included, like fall into the trap of it and then have to remember. But I think that it's kind of like one thing I've realized is whenever there's something that you're nervous to do, and for some people it might be feeling emotions and expressing emotions, but it could be like getting into business. Once you've made that step and you're actually in that new experience, you realize that making the decision to get in there was only just the first thing you needed to do. And now there's all this work that you actually have to do to make this new commitment actually eventuate to what you want it to be. So like when you get into business, it's like, oh, I just want to, like, will I launch the ad? When I launch it? All right, finally launch the ad. And then it absolutely bombs. And then you're like, okay, shit, now I need to learn how to market properly. And there's a whole process of like, maybe for someone that's new, it'll be 3 or 6 months of getting good at marketing enough to get results. And I feel like for healing as well, so many people haven't started feeling. For me, it was only over the last couple of years where I started giving myself permission to express, and then not, and still feel a sense of self-worth to know that that emotion and that expression and that surrendering control, I was still going to be safe and I was still worthy. And I think that's the big reason why people struggle when it comes to emotion, is because the ego's strategy to feel safe is to control things. And when you're in your emotion, it's the literal opposite of control. You fall out of control in that moment, and you don't know how you're going to react. And that's why it feels so weird to cry and you're like, fuck, everyone, I can't control this. It's just, it's just happening. And it was terrifying for me. If you remember back to when I was getting you to sell me on the idea of feeling, because Ricky got this shit sorted first, started feeling. And there was a point where with Ricky, his partner, myself and Danny, we were all aware of my inability to express. So it was a thing. It was like Ryan hasn't yet learned to express, but I wasn't fully in. I hadn't made that decision to feel fully yet. And so I was like, I want to feel, but I'm scared. Can you sell me on the idea of feeling? It's so funny. Like they're witnessing the play. How would you sell the people that are listening on the idea of feeling? I think there'll probably be more men than women that are in the category of those that haven't given themselves permission to express and not take away from who they are. Why is it important? Like, why should men let it out and express?
Yeah. The first kind of thing that comes to mind is, Tony Robbins talks about the quality of your life is the quality of the emotions that you feel. And it's kind of like, if you're feeling if you're not feeling emotions, what you're actually experiencing is a feeling of kind of neutrality, like just being neutral. Because we are experiencing our experience of life through our feelings, what we see, what we smell, like our senses, right? And the emotions is one of them. And if your perspective is that you're not feeling much, you're actually just feeling kind of neutral. And so if we think about that and then we relate it to, my famous sales pitch is relating it to color. Like, imagine if you were seeing life in black and white right now, would that be better, or like, would that be a more fulfilling experience of life or a less fulfilling experience of life than seeing in color? I think for most people, they would agree, like, well, I want to see in color. I want to see the sunrise, the sunset. I want to see the green, plants and trees. I want to see the, people's face. I want to see, like, art. So that's kind of like how I think about it. And, other than that, it's just like, it's kind of living neutral or living with the, highs and lows. And
on that
some
metaphor,
people, yeah.
it'd kind of be like, if you don't like brown, you're like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to choose to not see any color in the whole world just so I avoid seeing brown. Now I'm going to see black and white for the rest of my life. Metaphorically, for
Yeah.
emotions, it's like, I don't want to feel sadness. So I'm just going to numb myself, and I don't get to experience as much of the variety of different emotions.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are afraid that by feeling more, that they're going to feel like proportionately more negative emotions than positive emotions. But that's forgetting that you're a creator. That's forgetting that you get to create your experience. And yes, there are programs and ego patterns and behaviors that will play out. But if you have that mindset of like, when the negative stuff comes out, like, if I want to feel positive emotions, then you can kind of assume that if a negative emotion arises, it's likely a pattern and a program in the ego. So then if you just heal them as they come up, what you'll find is over time, they're going to come up less often. You're going to be more empowered to create your reality, because as you chip away at those, automatic programs, then you're more in the creator zone. Another thing I wanted to say is that, with the highs and lows, it's kind of like a roller coaster ride. I'm well aware. And, if you want to get more into, feeling your emotions, you need to be aware that there are going to be highs and lows, just like a roller coaster. But I want to live my life on the roller coaster, not just like walking on the street, watching people on the roller coaster. Now, maybe people don't resonate with roller coasters and they just don't like them, but it's like a movie. Do you want to watch a movie? Like, do you want to watch a soccer match, like a football, soccer match that is 0-0 and no one scores? Or do you want to watch a movie where there's all kinds of twists and turns and like you're feeling one thing and then the next second, you're feeling the other thing. And maybe there's a character that makes you feel some kind of negative emotions, or they do something that you don't approve of that, makes you feel some negative stuff. But then there's a hero that makes you feel empowered. And I like the movie. I like the experience of the movie. I like the drama. I like the ups and downs and the experience and the flavor and the variety. I don't want to watch a, just a neutral kind of thing where there's no spikes in emotion. And I said that a soccer match might be 0-0. A 0-0 soccer match can still be very entertaining, but it's like, do you want to watch people just walking on the street doing nothing as like a movie, or do you want to watch like some crazy action movie or romantic movie or comedy or whatever? Like that's kind of the metaphor of what it's like when you experience more emotion.
That's really powerful, and I'm gonna make a pretty big call here, and that is that most people, most entrepreneurs, I'm just gonna go to entrepreneurs because that's our kind of like field. Most entrepreneurs strive and believe that they're going to create freedom. Like that's what they believe that they're trying to create with their businesses. I'm going to create all this cash flow. I'm going to create all this fucking, be in charge of my life, a leader. And that's going to give me the freedom to create the life that I want. But I feel like a big draw card when it comes to emotions, you touched on earlier. It's like, if you're not expressing emotion, you're essentially expressing the truth of who you are. And therefore you're not fucking free. And you're never going to find freedom by trying to control things more. It's like freedom is going to come from you being okay, not being okay, experiencing like the sadness, the anger, letting it out and letting people see you in that state and know that you're still worthy of love. And one thing that I've experienced with expressing emotion is that only when I give myself permission to feel and not allow it to take away from who I am in my own mind as I'm feeling it, do people actually feel a deep sense of connection with me. Like when I'm trying to uphold a certain element of control and I'm holding tightly onto the idea that I shouldn't be seen in a certain way and I need to look perfect or successful or accomplished or happy or joyous, but I'm not allowed to feel sad or angry or embarrassed or ashamed or jealous, then people feel disconnected. And I feel like our relationship, yours and mine, has become so much more rich and so much more fulfilling because we really give ourselves permission to be seen in all parts of ourselves. And it creates this deep sense of connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think that there, and I used to believe the same thing, like only a few years ago, that if I make enough money, if I'm, successful enough, that then I will be able to have the freedom and the life that I want. I'll be able to attract the kind of partner that I want. I'd be able to, just travel and do whatever I want. But actually, it's not about accumulating money to unlock those like realities. It's kind of like a game where you unlock those realities by actually leaning in to that reality, not by stacking up money. The money doesn't buy the reality. Like the money doesn't buy the soul connection with a partner. The money might make a woman in general slightly more attracted to you because you've proven that you're a protector and you're someone that can add value into the world to get compensated with money. So it's kind of like it can create some signals that you're a certain type of person, which may be more attractive, but like it doesn't create, like having more money doesn't make you more present with a woman. It doesn't make you, better at sex. It doesn't make you, more
fulfilled.
Like, yeah, fulfilled. So but I don't want to be, I want to make it clear because often people say, money doesn't make you happy and whatever. And then people that say that seem as if they're against money. I am a business person. I love making money and I welcome as much money and abundance into my life, but I'm aware that it's like one category of life. Just like improving your relationship with your partner doesn't necessarily improve your relationship with your family or your friends, or improving your health doesn't necessarily, improve something else. There are some like intertwined things and they influence each other, but it's like making more money doesn't make you a better partner. It doesn't make you more fulfilled. It doesn't make you more, etc. It can contribute, but I think that, a big thing for me was like, before I met Carolina and I was getting into like dating and meeting women, I realized like how flawed my original thinking of, if I make a lot of money, I'll find a partner that I realized how flawed that was. Because when I started meeting women, I started to realize that I didn't even mention the fact that I, run a business or anything to do with wealth. And I realized that I can create the attraction or the rejection, right? Or I can create the, connection or lack thereof, completely irrelevant to money. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs think that it's like a shortcut. It's not, because I can tell you that there are plenty of guys attract, beautiful, incredible women in higher volumes without having any money, just because they're authentic and they know who they are. And it might be a musician and they're broke. Their life might be a whole mess, but they're so authentic in their music that women love that. Whereas a guy that is just like makes a lot of money and he's got no personality and he's just like a workaholic and whatever, like a woman isn't going to find that attractive. So I think that, it's really interesting how I just think ultimately when you become your most authentic self, you attract because everything's a mirror. You become your most authentic self, then you attract all of the things that, create context for you to be more your authentic self. And if you then want to be someone, if your authentic self decides, I want to experience love and connection, you're then going to attract the context in your life to make that happen. That might be through a partner, that might be through a business or a friendship or, connection with a family member or whatever it might be, connection with God, which is then going to help you manifest that expression of who you are. So I think that's ultimately where the magic in life is decide who you want to be in the present moment, and it can always change. The next present moment, you can decide to be a different person. But it's just like, choose who you are and then lean into that and allow yourself to be that. And then everything magically flows into place.
Beautifully said, man. How the fuck do you do that when you're nervous to be a version of yourself that you've never been accepted for yet, because you've never been that in this new moment? Let's say you're a straight edge sort of dude and you're like, no, I want to be a little bit more confident and loud and expressive, and I want to say jokes more, and I want to say my opinion more. And you're like, well, up until this point, I'm not viewed that way. And you know how that thing that you mentioned to me that Tony says, Tony Robbins, when he's like, the most powerful force in the universe is the force that has us try to live up to the way that other people perceive us, and stay in alignment with the way that we think that other people perceive us, not even the way that they actually do. It's just an assumption that, hey, Pete, I think that people see me in this certain way, and therefore I want to make sure that I continue to show up in the way they perceive me. So if I think everyone thinks I'm quiet, then I'm just going to, to be loud. Is like that force prevents and makes it more difficult to be loud, because we're trying to uphold that random view. Like, how have you navigated this?
Yeah, I'm happy to share that. I actually want to mention two specific quotes that Tony says, which, you kind of combine them into one there, but I want to discern the two specific things, because I think it'll be valuable for people. Awesome. One is, he says, the strongest force in the human personality is the need to remain consistent with how we define ourselves. So that's kind of essentially like, there's a strong force that we want to be consistent with how we define ourselves. And then there's another quote that he says, which is, most people's lives are a direct reflection of the expectations of their peer group. So they kind of it's kind of like, we want to remain consistent with how we define ourselves, and our life is naturally going to be kind of consistent with how people define us. So those are kind of like the two things that we're battling with, is like, how do we see ourselves and how do other people see us? And we have such an innate need for connection, because literally as humans, like when we're babies, like our survival strategy is to be in connection with our parents or our community that are taking care of us. Because as a baby, you can't provide yourself with the nutrition that you need, just because you're just a baby. If you just left on a field, you're probably not going to make it. You need the love of your parents, or for example, your mom, and then to get, the breast milk and the nurturing and the love. And there's even been studies that have been done that it's like, kids that are given love, like there's actually like the proactive kind of intention of their parents to send them love, and then those that are kind of neglected, they turn out completely differently, and they have health problems if they're not loved. So we're actually created to be loved and to be, in connection with others, and without that, we actually, have health problems and we can die. So but with that, how do we do that? How do we be who we want to be, if it's going to compromise our connection? Well, firstly, it's like I would suggest that people attempt to, like, they decide this is who I want to be, and they start to make those changes. If the people in their life are resistant, which naturally they will be at first because they're afraid that you're changing and that your relating experience is going to change, which kind of threatens their experience of life. So there's going to be resistance. My suggestion would be decide who you are and really own who you are, which you have the ability to do right now. Even if you have people in your life that are against that, right now, listening to my voice, if you're listening to this, you have the power right now to decide who you are. No one has that power over you. You decide. So that's step one. You decide who you are and who you want to be, which may be different to how you've been showing up recently. Second is, you need to own that and express that to the people around you, and realize that, there's probably going to be some resistance at first, but let them know that you still love them. Let them know that you don't judge them, because if you judge them, that's going to create disconnection, and not because them judging you, but because you judge them. So if you don't judge them, they're less likely to judge you. If you still love them, they're more likely to be on board with what you're doing. So give it a chance. And then if over some time you realize that peer group or that family, those friends aren't really resonating, and maybe they're making it difficult for you, maybe they're shutting you down, they're making it hard for you to embody who you are, my suggestion would be create distance. Like, you don't have to completely, have falling outs and destroy those relationships. Maybe that is what's needed, but what I would recommend is think of it as like, in the short term, I am kind of creating some space where I have a peer group of people that support me and my decision of who I am. And then you can always kind of reconnect later with the people that you originally had the connection with, where you're then way more grounded in who you are. You have a supportive network of people that are encouraging of who you are. So then you're going to own that when you reapproach the people that you may have created distance with. And then at that point, you can decide, is it still worth maintaining that relationship, or is it something that you need to let go of? So I wouldn't suggest people get too quick in just like having falling outs with people and having the assumption that no one accepts them for who they want to be. But I would say that it is likely that is going to happen. So I would suggest people create space. And when you create space, naturally you're creating availability for new people to come into your life. So, and I think a perfect example, Ryan, is when we met each other. We were, I think, 19 at the time, 19 or 20 at the time. And at that point, I hadn't really developed my friendship group of, young entrepreneurs and people into personal development. I had my friends from high school, which then I was starting to get into my own business. I could start to feel some resistance. Like there were different elements of resistance. Some of it was like, they thought I was, they were insecure that maybe I thought I was better than them. Maybe some of that was true, and I had an ego where I thought I was better than them and I was judging them. There was some elements of jealousy. There was jealousy, judgment, and a few other things. And we were separating. And then I decided, and the personal development wisdom was saying, like, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and things like this. So I was like, okay, I need 5 new people. And then, I met one of our mutual friends, Jake Allen. You knew Jake. You invited him to, catch up with some young entrepreneurs. Jake invited me. I came along. I met you, some of the other guys that, were there. And then I just got more into that vibe. And then you and I just instantly resonated. Like, we instantly resonated. We had so many things in common. And then since then, like my only friends now, pretty much my only friends are either into business, health, spirituality, or personal development. It's rare that you're going to find, I don't think I have any friends that don't at least tick one of those boxes. And most of them tick all of them, if not, 3 out of the 4 of them. So it's made it very easy for me now to just be who I am. And then, we're always reinventing ourselves. But I think that, I think that what I laid out is a pretty solid plan. And when you start to have people around you that are actually encouraging you for being who you are, it makes it so much easier.
Mm-hmm. That's why our friendship's so awesome, because it's like, doesn't matter what you come up with and that you're going to do next, like, or who you say you're going to be next, we're just like way up to support each other. It's just pretty cool. I think that idea, man, that was super powerful and really well explained. The idea that you can choose who you want to be is so fucking powerful. Like, you can change it. Because even as you were saying it, I was thinking in my mind, like, fuck, there's certain elements where there's peer groups or people that I'm connected with now that see me in a certain way. And I don't that's not in alignment with who I actually want to be. And I can just make a decision to change how I'm showing up. But it's something that if I didn't bring the idea of being able to claim a new identity and claim a new way of relating, that I wouldn't have changed it. I just would have kept showing up in the same way. It's just so interesting, right? That like in this moment, you could just be like, no, I am someone that is a mega successful business owner, or I'm someone that always speaks my truth, or I'm someone that's funny and I tell jokes. And you can just bring that in.
Yeah.
The next encounter that you have, you can just be like reeling off all these jokes and people are like, what the fuck? Where the hell has this guy come from? And you like just discovered or like awakened a part of you that you'd suppressed or not given yourself permission to show up as. It's like, fuck, that is like the most powerful concept. And I love how in our last chat that we had, we were talking about the idea of just claiming new identities. Can you give the example of the one that you did when someone asked you, "Oh, are you a blah blah?" I think it's really powerful. It was a music thing, just to give you a hint.
Oh, yeah. So this is so funny, actually. So, when I was younger, I had some guitar lessons and I played a little bit of guitar. And right now, as it stands, I can play 4 common chords on the guitar and like a couple of simple strumming patterns. And, if I look up on Google and they show me like where I need to put the fingers, I can figure it out pretty quickly. But by no means can I like play, many songs or like sing or anything like that. But the other day, someone asked me like, do you play the guitar, or are you a guitarist or something like that? And it was like kind of fresh after hearing this idea on a podcast about you can just claim identities. And then the sooner you claim it, the quicker it manifests. And then I was just like, it kind of just, there was a moment, like a 1 second hesitation where, and this is happening every day for people. Someone asks you like, who are you? And then it's essentially the universe is saying, who are you? And then that question, you take it in. And then the, awareness and thought process is, who am I? And you get to decide. So someone said, are you a guitarist? And I was like, yeah. And that was all I said. And then they were just like, oh, cool. And then we just kept walking or whatever. We kept talking about whatever. And then in that moment, I decided that's who I am. So then that makes me more likely to create the reality where, and see, the thing is that at what point do you get to decide if you're a guitarist or if you're a successful entrepreneur? Like there are no typically there are no official like rules as to like when that is. And even if there are, remember, you get to decide who you are. So you get to decide when you've hit the tipping point. If the person asked me a week earlier, maybe I wasn't, but maybe then a week later I decided, actually, now I am. And maybe I didn't touch the guitar in that, period of time. So I think that, when we look at what reality do we want to create, maybe we want to become a musician. Maybe we want to become a business owner. Maybe we want to become, a parent or like whatever it might be. The sooner we claim the identity and we're like, this is who I am, we start to act in a way in accordance with who we are. Because remember, the strongest force in the human personality is the need to remain consistent with how we define ourselves. So define yourself and then you'll naturally act in accordance with that. And then that's how your life manifests in the way that you choose.
The reason I'm laughing is because I'm thinking
So
of
funny.
the parent idea. Someone's like, are you a parent? And you're like, yeah. they're like, oh yeah. Do you have a son or a daughter? It's like, oh, I don't have any. So it's like, wait, are you a parent? Wait, do you have kids? And you're like, no, I'm a parent. It's like, all right, I'm confused now. What's going on here? But it's such a true thing. And one way I used to do this really solidly was when I used to get asked the question, what do you do? I'd have an elevator pitch that I just slam out. That was like defining the best possible articulation, or what I saw and perceived to be the most powerful articulation of what I did with my business back then, which was a web design agency. And recently when I've been asked, I haven't really saw it as an example to really own and claim who I am. Like if someone asked me who I am now, and I could, so what do you do? I could say something along the lines of, I'm an international speaker. I light up stages around the world, and I just empower people to fucking own themselves at the highest level, or whatever it is. But it's like, oh yeah, I do coaching, online business stuff. It's not like I feel like every time you get asked, what do you do? It's actually like an invitation, like you said, from the universe to claim what it is that you're wanting to bring into the world with absolute certainty. And that's exciting.
Totally.
Fuck, that is super exciting.
Yeah, and I want to make it tangible for people to realize, like, how does this actually manifest the life that you want? Because this might sound like some woo-woo stuff, but let me give you an example. Let's say that you meet like a wedding photographer, right? And you meet someone and you like at maybe at a party, and you're just having like a good conversation, and then you're like, oh, so what do you do for work? And they're like, oh, I'm a freelance wedding photographer. And then you're like, oh, awesome. Tell me about it. And then they're just like telling you about it. And then let's say that you then, a week later, one of your friends is like planning their wedding, and they're like, yeah, we're still looking for like a wedding photographer. Maybe they do a post on Facebook. Does anyone have any wedding photographers they recommend? And then maybe you message them or you call them and you say, hey, I met this really awesome, person at this party a week ago. They're a wedding photographer. You should totally chat to them. Like, they seemed incredible. They were telling me a bit about it, and it sounded amazing. Then that conversation happens, and then maybe this wedding photographer gets that client, which is your friend. Now, here's the thing. That's something that happens every day. But what we don't know is maybe that wedding photographer has never taken photos at a wedding, but they claimed it in advance, and you bought into the certainty. And here's the thing, everyone starts somewhere. Everyone has their first client. So what's wrong about just claiming it before you've had the first client? Because it's like, you're not a wedding photographer once you've taken photos of a wedding the first time, because before you've done that, if you've been hired to take photos for a wedding the first time, you are technically the wedding photographer for this wedding, even though you've never done it before. It's going to be the first one. So why does it have to be when you've been hired? No, it can be earlier. It can be when you decide. And that's always what happens. So, anyone that has ever, done anything, the time that they claimed that they were that identity was, long before they were recognized by everyone to do that. And it's the same with every decision that you make. Actions don't happen before, you decide to do something and then you do it. And it might even be just like a unconscious decision, but it's like, just like decisions shape your actions and your reality, your decision to decide who you are shapes everything.
Yeah, man. Fuck, that's so powerful. I actually did that once when I was like 18, or about when I was going out and just practicing my social skills, and I was out one night, and people, this couple I was talking to were like, what do you do? And I was just like, oh, I'm a male stripper. Just Like, it was just like, I wasn't actually, but they're like, oh, you should do my friend's got a 30th come up. Would you be interested in doing a strip show? And I was like, in the moment, because I was doing lots of fear challenges, I claimed it. And this opportunity came out of nowhere, which I did. And it was a really life-changing experience for me because it was so outside my comfort zone. But it never would have happened if I didn't just claim that in advance. And I think what's really important in this concept, it's similar to belief systems, that the purpose behind a belief system, if you're using it as a functional personal development principle, is to be to your advantage. So like Tony Robbins says, like, when he was younger, he had the belief system that youth is power, but he said, when I get older, I'll change it and say maturity is power. Because if I believe that youth is power, I'm going to take bigger action. I'm going to feel more confident. So it doesn't even matter what's true or not true. It's just what's functional. And it's the same thing with identity. It's like, is it going to be more advantageous to see yourself as the epitome of who it is that you're wanting to become? Or is it more advantageous to, just say, oh, no, I'm just like thinking about becoming this? It's like, no, it's going to be way better for you because you're forced. What was that? There were two quotes you mentioned of Tony's. What was the first one? The way you define yourself. Can you say that quote?
Yeah, so the strongest force in the human personality is the need to remain consistent with how we define ourselves.
Fuck. So that's like, if you define it, then you're capitalizing on the strongest force in the universe because everything in your body is wanting you to act in alignment with that way that you've defined yourself. So if you're like, and this is what I find with social accountability. Like when you start speaking things that you want to create, and you see with all like the big famous people around the world, like Conor McGregor as an example, he's like, I'm going to become 2-time world champion. If he says that out there publicly and there's millions of people watching, he's activated the strongest force in the universe, which is like, because he's defined himself as a 2 times world champion. And now in his body, he has this force that's urging and willing him to do anything and everything that he can to become 2-time world champion, because he's clicked it the moment that he's had the courage to speak what it is that he wants to create. And I heard the other day, because I was over at Alyssa and Richard's, and Richard was telling me about the fact that you were telling him, and he was saying it in a really positive way, that you want to buy an island, right? It's
Yeah.
like something that you have an ambition to do.
Like I declare right now, I own an island. Like I actually own an island. It is happening. You watch this podcast in 10 years and look my name up. I own an island. Like it is not a, it's not a, like a, it's not a desire. It is something that has already happened. I am just stepping into that reality. It has happened. I own an island. Continue.
Fuck yeah, man. That's amazing, dude. And because you've had the confidence, because a lot of people would feel embarrassed about, they'd be like, oh, am I going to be judged because I'm saying that I've got this big ambition, and it creates the space for people to potentially talk me down. But that wasn't even like, you communicated it to me. Now I'm like a part of the universe that's like, I've got an expectation. I'm in your peer group and I hold an expectation now that you're going to get an island. And what was the second quote that expectation was?
Yeah. So then most people's lives are a direct reflection of the expectations of their peer group.
Yeah. So now, as a part of your peer group, I have the expectation that you're going to get an island, and so does Richard, and so does Alyssa, and so does anyone that I tell about
exactly. Everyone does. And you know why? It's because I'm certain in it. If I was like, oh yeah, maybe like I'll have an island one day, no one's going to take it serious. But if you re-listen to this and listen to the certainty in my voice, I believe it. I believe I own an island. It is happening. It will happen. I will step into that reality. But it is true. It is part of my timeline where that reality exists. And I choose with my own free will as a conscious creator that exists. So, and actually, I want to say something is going to be the most woo-woo thing I've said on this whole thing.
Woo!
But it's, for me, it's exciting because it was my experience and I know that it was true for me. And some people might think this is crazy, this guy's lost the plot. But I'm telling you right now, this is what I experienced. And I know that it's like a true principle in the universe. It just seemed a bit kind of wild. So the other day, after deciding that I own an island, I experienced this incredible kind of what would I call it? I experienced this kind of like ego death where I was no longer identified with Ricky Baldasso, human on Earth, and I was kind of like it was actually, I was like, I just woken up from a dream, and I was kind of in that like space of like being half asleep, half awake. And what I was experiencing was this awareness of who I am. Now, wait for it. It's going to sound crazy, but I'll explain. Who I am is 10,000 meters squared. What does that mean? What do you mean 10,000 meters squared? Like, what is that? Like, what do you mean who I am is 10,000 meters squared? A few days prior to this kind
Doesn't
of
seem
dream,
woo-woo. It seems very scientific.
yeah, well, I'll explain it. So before, a few days before this, I was looking at what was it? Privateislandsonline.com or some website like this. I think that was the URL, where it literally shows all these islands you can buy, just like, like a real estate .com or like whatever, one of these websites where you can buy houses.
Yeah.
There is a directory where you can buy islands, and it shows you all these islands. You can either buy them or you can rent them. It shows how many meters square they are. It shows the price of them. It shows photos. And when I was looking at it, I was like, because I always thought, oh, buying an island is like, you probably need to like be a billionaire and maybe they're like $500 million or something. But you look at this website, some of them are for sale for like 10, 15 million US dollars. And you look at them and they're maybe like 10,000 meters squared, some of them. So like 100 meters by 100 meters is 10,000 meters squared. But when I first saw this and it was like 10,000 meters squared, even though I'm kind of like an analytical dude and stuff in business, I hadn't really thought about this like whole meters squared thing for like since school. I was like, is 10,000 meters squared like 10,000 meters by 10,000 meters? Or is it 100 meters by 100 meters? So I looked it up. Turns out it's 100 meters by 100 meters. But I remember having this feeling of confusion, like what is 10,000 meters squared? And anyway, fast forward to this like kind of dream state where I was like, I am 10,000 meters squared. What I was feeling and my interpretation of this experience was that I was channeling the island that is mine, that is the another part of the universe that is like, because when you send a request out, I own an island, and I was thinking that's 10,000 meters squared. What happens is that gets sent out into the universe. Remember, we're all energy, we're all connected. So then there is another part of the universe that wants to fulfill my desire because it's God's desire. Any desire you have is God's desire, and God wants to fulfill God's self's desires. So I'm a part of the universe that says, I want an island that's 10,000 meters squared. Like, I own an island 10,000 meters squared. There's another part of the universe which is an island, and there's lots of parts of the universe that are islands. And there's one that's like, I'm hearing this request, like, do I want to fulfill it? Like, someone will, because like it needs to be fulfilled because it's God's desire. But then there's a part of the universe that's like, do I want to fulfill it? Well, I need to know, is my authentic expression of who I am resonant and attracted to that other part of God's expression of who they are? Because that's how things manifest, that both parties have desire each other. So it's like this part of God wants this part of God, and this part of God wants this part of God, because their coexistence allows them to be authentic expressions of who they are. So if there's a man that wants to be an incredible husband, and there's a woman that wants to be an incredible wife, and they just like their desires kind of match, and they like allow each other to co-create their own like, unique desires, and they fulfill them. It's kind of like, I was tuning in to a island, like island energy. And I was the island, and I was like, what is 10,000 meters squared? Because for a human, we know what that is. It's a logical like construct and framework that we understand. But as an island, they understand, soil and sun and water, and like if they think, because if you're the part of God that is an island, or your Mother Earth, what is your wisdom? Your wisdom is different to human wisdom. It is knowing how, like, how to grow food. If someone plants seeds in you, you know how to grow food. You know how to express yourself through trees and different like, you know, like flowers and things like that. That is who you are. You are an island. You are Mother Earth. That's how you express yourself. But then if Mother Earth, I was channeling this island and I was like I am 10,000 meters squared and someone wants me, like, is that resonating with me? Like, what is 10,000 meters squared? And I was kind of in this like confused state where I was like, what is this? Like, apparently this is who I am. Someone's trying to define me like this. Does this resonate? And it was a bit of like a kind of weird kind of experience. But my point is that I want people to take away from this is that when you send out a request, but it's not so much a request as it is a statement of who you are. We're all connected. We're all God. And for you to be who you are, there needs to be context that makes that true. So if you are a forgiving person, you need context of someone that hurt you that you can forgive. Without that, how can you really like say that you're a forgiving person? If you are a, you know, and it goes on, anything you define yourself as, you need context to create that. And your desire is God's desire. We're all connected. So it's within God's best interest to manifest your desires, but it needs to be simultaneously a fulfillment of that part's desire. So then the manifestation trick I realized was, okay, for me to manifest an island that is 10,000 meters squared, there will be an island on the world that's 10,000 meters squared that is trying to manifest me. So who do I have to be to meet their desires so that it's a win-win? And I get to express myself as who I want to be, an owner of a 10,000 meter squared island. And the island gets to express itself as an expression of God for who it wants to be. So I can tune into that. I can channel into it. And what I realized was the island doesn't want to know itself as 10,000 meters squared. That's not how it wants to be identified and how it wants to be expressed. It wants to be expressed as a nurturing, like, place of healing and, you know, consciousness expansion and things like that. So now to like enable this manifestation to happen, I'm now kind of thinking, okay, I'm going to be the most incredible owner of an island that meets the needs of the island and honors the island and, you know, these things, because then like an island is going to manifest to someone's ownership. All the islands, someone already owns them, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to be the best owner so that then the island is more drawn to be owned by me so I can meet its needs. And I think that that's it, like, to relate that to business, it's like, if you focus on meeting the customer's needs more than anyone else, you will always win. Because, like, yes, you know, oftentimes the best marketed product wins as opposed to the best product. But if you have the best marketing and the best product, you're going to win because you're doing the best job of meeting the needs of the customer. And if they know that that service exists through marketing, and then they know that an inferior product exists through their marketing, they're going to choose the product that meets their needs the best. So, and that's how you manifest success and abundance in business, is by being the best fulfiller of the needs of the other end of the manifestation.
That was such a
wow.
Thank you for your radical authenticity, man. And I related the concept in a less woke way, just with a partner. Like, I was thinking, like, okay, cool, I've got this vision of the relationship that I want to have, and I want to be my absolute most authentic self in that relating experience. But there's also a woman out there that is desiring the exact same relating experience that I can provide, but she has a perception of what it's going to be like to be the recipient of being in a relationship with me. And I noticed myself recently focusing more on the desires that I have, which is also a really important part, but less thinking about and feeling into the idea that there's a woman that is desiring the experience, and what would she see in me being my authentic self as appealing, and then holding space for that receiver energy as well.
Mm-hmm.
You feel me? For anyone that's listening, you're missing out on the awesome little cues that we're doing on here. But yeah,
and you know something I want to emphasize, Ryan, is that Like, we are creators. And some people might think that, you know, like, what does that mean? I don't resonate. You create your reality. Like right now, if I want to show my, you know, crystal ball on the camera and this is being filmed, I can just do that. You know, if I want to say to Ryan, hey, I want to speak about this, I can just create that with my speaking. And it's not always going to happen. If you're attached, then the universe is probably going to try and teach you a lesson. But if you just come out and you're coming from like a place of love and authenticity, in most situations, you're going to get what you want. Ryan could have cut me off right now and then we could have gone down a different path. But if I want to go down this path, I can create that. And I want to emphasize that, you know, if you can stand up and go to the kitchen and get some water, then you can also, you know, think of the business and, you know, create that business and get the people and the resources that you need to manifest that business. It's not going to be as simple or as easy, but it can happen. Anything is possible. If I can do it, you can do it. If someone else can do it, you can do it. And what I want to emphasize really though, is that when you tune into your authentic space, your desires can be kind of like, remember, your desires are God's desires. And everything that's ever happened has been because of some part of God's desire. We're all connected. Someone had a desire. All kinds of crazy things happen in the world, all kinds of beautiful things, all kinds of evil things. But it is someone's desire that is an expression of God, because we're all one, we're all connected, we're all God, we're all, our souls, our spirits are fragments of God. So what I want to say is that if you have a desire and you judge it, or you think that's crazy, or no one would ever be, you know, would want to help me fulfill on this desire, remember, your desire is God's desire, and we're all one, and God wants to fulfill God's desires, which means that if you state the desire, there's a high likelihood that there will be another part of God somewhere, another soul, another human, another whatever, that is going to create the reciprocity and enable you to experience that. And I just want to encourage people to be true to their desires, you know, and it can be anything, because I think that as we become adults, we kind of we can categorize ourselves as like, what's an appropriate desire and what's not. But we all are essentially, you know, kids that have grown up. It's not like we were one human that was a kid and then we just like entered a different body and we're like now an adult. We are an evolved child or kid. So it is completely okay, for example, to have desires that are like quote unquote childish or like kid-like. And, you know, the other day when I was hanging out with Carolina and one of our friends, Magda, and I just gotten my ball, I decided that I wanted to be like a kid. I wanted to just like us all to like channel our inner child and be like, I don't know, 5 years old, and just like sit in a circle and pretend that we're kids and just play like little kids do. Like, and I was like, let's, you know, throw the ball to each other and let's, you know, and then someone else created a different game. And we're just kind of literally being like 5-year-olds. If you saw us, you would have thought we're from some like mental institution where we're adults, where we're actually got like the brains of a 5-year-old. But it's like, I had, for whatever reason, that desire, which is God's desire. And I was like, I'm not afraid to admit it. I have enough like self-respect and self-love to honor that. I was like, I want to be like a kid right now. And I encourage people to do that, because when you meet your own desires, or you are comfortable to speak out your desires, you'll be shocked at how often they manifest and how much more fulfilling your life is, as opposed to every time you have a desire, just having a filter of like, no one's going to allow me to manifest this or whatever. But then you reinforce this like idea that nothing manifests. But the more often you enable your own little mini manifestations, you become so confident in your ability to manifest bigger manifestations, and, you know, more substantial things. For example, if you want to be a kid and you want to play with a ball, and then if you want to have some water, but you don't want to be the one to get it, and you ask, you know, your partner or your friend to go to the kitchen to get you water, or any small little thing, as you start to realize everything manifests, you start to get into the creative energy. So then when it comes to business, you then are a lot more successful in building the business, because you're not afraid to say, this is what I want, and then actually make it happen.
Yeah, dude, that's fucking awesome. That is fucking sick. And I was going to say, like, people feel comfortable with this principle when you use examples like going to the kitchen, but there's a big to get a water. But then when it comes to things that they kind of have the belief that they is going to be more difficult for them to create, like for example, if someone hadn't broken through in business before or started a business successfully, and you said, well, you can manifest anything, they go, well, yeah, glass of water in the kitchen, that's one thing. Manifesting a business doing $500,000 a year is a whole different thing. And as a result, they are less likely to then manifest that $500,000 business, because what happens is anything that is a desire, an intuitive pull, that's like a real strong intuitive pull, it's the reason that God's gifting us these desires is because God or the universe is trying to allow us to have opportunities to grow. And so every time we have a desire, whatever, like I might have the desire to learn to kite surf, and then I just join some company, get some coaching to learn how to kite surf, and then become a kite surfer. And if I had that desire, there's going to be some growth opportunities there. I'm going to like, maybe I'll just suck shit at the start, and it kind of humbles me a bit, and I learn to be okay and love myself through the phase of like eating shit all the time on the waves and whatever. But everything that is intuitive is designed. The function of intuition is to give us something that's appealing enough, that pulls us enough to pursue, so that we go into the unfamiliar, because where the unfamiliar is where the growth is created. But it feels out of control, because it is. Because if it was familiar, then it wouldn't be intuitive. It would just be something that we already can do. So we don't even need to have faith. We don't even need to ask for the universe's support, because we got it. We know how to get water. That's not like a big intuitive pull. It's just something we already know how to do. So for anyone that's listening to this, that's like, okay, I've got desires, but I'm not confident that if I believe in them, that it's going to happen. You need to understand the fact that that desire is being gifted to you, because the pursuit of whatever it is that feels really exciting for you is going to create growth. And you can detach or know that you're going to get growth no matter what, and detach away from the outcome. You actually have a really great chance of making it happen, because as soon as if you believe it and start saying it, opportunities arise to actually start moving that direction. But there is a shit ton of things for a big intuitive desire that need to, like for Ricky to get an island, it could just be presented to him where like he just randomly has another part of God in the universe that wants to fulfill that desire. And there's an island giveaway competition in some country or whatever, and he just enters a draw and wins it. Yeah, that could happen. But more like there's a higher chance of there being all these different things, like 5,000 different actions between now and the island happening in 10 years time, or whatever you defined it, to allow that to come into fruition. And you can't control what that's going to look like. So the surrender aspect is holding super strong belief. And this is why what you said, Rick, with like by manifesting small things, it gives you confidence that you are a creator, and you start to give yourself the opportunity to create more, because you believe that if you have a desire and you believe that you can create it, that it's actually possible for it to come into fruition. So you start holding the end result in more often and for longer, to get through the different how aspects that are unknown, and the challenges that create the growth on the journey to that thing, as opposed to being really easily defeated or knocked back, or feeling disappointed, and because it hasn't happened straight away. Like the stronger that you hold the belief, and the strength of the belief is going to come from the evidence that other things that you've desired, that you've had belief around, have actually come true. The stronger that you hold the belief, the greater the chance is that you're going to be resilient enough and show up enough for it actually to be a manifestation, a physical thing in your actual life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%, man. And one thing I want to talk about as well that's relevant to this is something we've talked about quite often before, Ryan, which is the idea of like the divine plan, where what happens is what was divinely meant to happen. So even if something feels like a setback, it actually, in some mysterious way, is like the path towards everything that your soul desires. And you know, the metaphor I like to give is like, if you look at a graph of like a stock over time, and it naturally has its ups and downs, and it might even crash massively and then build up, or it might go exponentially high or whatever. It's like, that is our life, and where the graph starts and where it ends, that is like where we're born and the end of our life. And our divine path for our soul is the journey of those ups and downs. And if we say, I want to have an island, and then at no point on the path do we actually have an island, what was divine was the desire to have an island and the conversations about the island. But then, for example, if the island doesn't manifest, that wasn't part of the divine plan. So that's my belief, is that, and I also like to kind of couple that belief with, the divine plan is even more fulfilling and beautiful and filled with love than I can possibly conceive. And here's the thing, beliefs manifest. Your belief is what manifests. And I think that that belief that I just shared is probably the best belief you could possibly have if I'm deciding what the best belief is, because then, as much of a creator as you are, or you're not, or as much as you have a desire or whatever, even if it doesn't happen, you're more fulfilled than you would be if it did, because you believe that life is going to be better, even if it does, you know, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
And I found that to be the case just since I decided that that was the belief, and it's something that Ryan and I have talked about, is that it just seems to happen. Like, you know, for example, my relationship with my partner, it's like beyond what I would have originally conceived was possible in a relationship. Or my just like connection to God is like, I never would have thought it. I couldn't have like created this like with my own like mind, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
I kind of am a big believer in like, yes, like honor your desires and try and feel into like the true authentic desires of your soul, but realize that you may not always get the clearest like channel and like understanding of like the true soul's desire. You can try and attempt, and maybe sometimes you'll get it correct, but I like to trust like the journey that my soul is taking me on. And I believe that it's like, for some reason in this life, I've decided that I want to experience a life where it appears as though no matter what I desire and what I create, it's always better than I can possibly imagine. And I encourage people to do the same.
It's such a healthy belief. It's such a cool belief. And what I really love about you, and one of the things, and this concept, is the fact that you can really own the desires, even if there's a chance that they're not going to be created. You can just go full into it anyway. And I think this is such an important principle. And I feel like I've done this pretty hardcore recently with like honoring my desires, but heaps of them not coming into fruition, but really owning them at the time. For example, over the last 4 or 5 months, because I've been like in this process of getting back into business, I made a massive call that I'm launching a magazine that I just decided to drop. I made a massive call that I'm starting this big company called Grow, that was going to be like a business where coaches would come in and I'd help them create their products through my platform. Didn't happen, just decided to ditch it. I've announced 2 different types of books that I was going to launch, and I dropped both of them. I launched a program that was called Crowning of the Kings that I didn't end up running. And recently I've announced the launch of a TV show. And at the moment, I'm not 100% sure whether I'm going to actually do it or not. So I just love the idea though, because it's been, and you know what? I'm just dubbing this as the reason that this has happened. Because before that, I found it really, really, like 3 years ago when I was in business and I was kind of in my flow of building a big company, I was really bad at committing to things because I was nervous that if I committed to them and it wasn't right, I was stuck. And so the idea that you can make massive calls and fully go into it and be completely cool if it doesn't happen and still feel full and fulfilled and realize that no one else gives a shit. Like for me, I used to be so like stuck in the idea that fuck it, am I going to do this magazine or not? What if I start it and it doesn't work out? And it's like, because once I've said it, because that force which is trying to rise to the expectations of my peer group or adhere to the expectations of my peer group, I'm like, my peer group expects it, so I need to do it. And what if I say that I'm going to do it and I don't do it, and then my peer group doesn't like me anymore? No one gives a shit. Like there's no, like there is like 0%. It's not even like it's 5. There's 0% of you that cares whether I did the magazine or not. It's not like 5% of you. There's 5% of you that you're like, man, I like 95% of me loves you unconditionally, but 5% of me doesn't like you because you didn't do the magazine. There's 0% of you that gives a shit.
Yeah.
And
well, you know, Ryan, something I want to discern is that that's because you love yourself. If you judged yourself, and it's the meaning that you create. If right now we're laughing about it, we're having a good time because we're conscious creators deciding, me saying I'm going to do a magazine and not, that's something I can laugh about. That's something that can be an example of the principle that I'm sharing right now on my podcast. For someone else, they would create the meaning that, oh, that means I'm a failure. That means that people won't trust me. That means that when I say something, people aren't going to believe that I'm going to be committed, etc. You create the meaning. You create who you are. And that's just like such a beautiful example of it. And, you know, something else I want to mention is that everything serves a purpose. Like even deciding to do something, maybe kind of getting it started and then deciding to no longer do it. In the time that you are spending energy on that, it served the purpose. And
well,
like,
I can
for
talk
example,
to it with the TV show, because with the TV show, the reason I was wanting to launch it is to get traction again in the coaching space. And in the first, like I've banked 80 grand over the last couple of weeks with my new coaching program from scratch, not being in business for ages, which is like beyond what I expected to happen. And if I do choose, because I can choose to ditch the TV show or do it, the function of what I was hoping it would create has already been achieved. And there's people that have applied to be on the show. And one guy reached out to me last night who's like an awesome quality client and said, man, I want to talk about doing your program. And the only reason it's come up is because he got excited about the idea of the show. And then he reached out saying, hey man, I'm not sure about the show, but I'd like to talk to you about, you know, working with you through your kind of like 20K program. And it was like, what? This is exactly what I desired, but it didn't happen in the way that I was thinking. And now the idea of doing the show seems like a massive fucking workload. And I'm like, I've already achieved what I was hoping to set out by doing it. So that desire like massively served a purpose. And now I'm like, mate, to be honest with you, I'm leaning towards the idea of I can't be fucked doing this TV show. But the outcome that I was hoping for has been achieved. And I'm back in the flow with an amazing group of people that I'm loving serving in my new program. So yeah, it's a cool example.
Yeah, that's amazing, dude. And I want to kind of discern something as well, that it's not like when this
you say it.
Dare I say it? Ryan and I love the word discernment. So anyway, dare I say it? So I want to discern that it's not like when this happens that you're only self-serving. You're actually serving a purpose in the universe for other people you're creating context for other people to experience who they are and to create more awareness of who they are. Because for example, let's say this opportunity, it might have sparked in some people the awareness that they really want to be a successful coach. Maybe they were kind of like, you know, fiddling around and not like, and dabbling and not really being committed. But maybe when they saw this opportunity, whether it, you know, actually manifests or not, it maybe lights a spark of like, yeah, I really want to. And then maybe it gets them to record a video application for the program. And maybe for them, they have struggled with insecurities around, you know, filming themselves and things like that. And maybe that's like the first little spark of them getting the video camera, filming it. They then overcome an insecurity, which could become the foundation of their whole coaching program where they're doing social media videos and getting clients. And I think that there's so much like hidden order and everything. That's why I really believe in the divine plan, because, you know, one other thing I want to share is that I remember a few months ago, I was kind of having this awareness that virtually everything that I've created that is of most like closest to my heart was kind of like random. Like I didn't really create it, like,
Mm,
you know, going to the kitchen to get the water or whatever. It was more like meeting you, Ryan, you know, my closest friend, and all the amazing experiences since we've known each other. That was because, you
so
know, my friend Jake just like invited me to a, you know, lunch that you organized, and I could have decided to go or not. And at that time I was pretty antisocial and not really the kind of guy that would be up for those things. But I was just like, yeah, like I'll come along. And then I met you and everything happened after that. Or like the way I
mm,
met my partner, I met her at a like an ecstatic dance type of event. And it was an event that one of my friends was running, who I'd only gotten to know this guy because once I was walking on Chapel Street with another friend, we bumped into this guy, we started talking, and then I kind of got to know him. And it's like, I was just walking on Chapel Street in, you know, Melbourne, and then this all manifested. I met, you know, Brett, I went to this thing, I met Carolina, then I started traveling the world and all the things that have come from that, you know, spiritual awakening and whatnot. It all flowed from something random. You could be walking down the street, or a friend could invite you to go out for lunch with some other friends. And just by like showing up, there's already a divine plan there that is like trying to help you manifest all your desires. And even, you know, beyond that, things you couldn't possibly conceive of. So that context is always getting created. And by you deciding to do something and then deciding later on that you're no longer in alignment with that in a new present moment, that that's not what you want to do anymore, in that journey, you haven't failed. You haven't let people down. You've created context for other people that's somehow magically playing into everyone else's divine plan.
yeah, man, that's super powerful. And I feel like dispelling this myth that people, without even being aware of it in most cases, I can imagine, have that by changing the expectations of their peer group, they're going to be shamed. And I don't think it's a conscious thing that people would say, oh, I'm thinking of leaving my job, but, you know, if I do that, all my peer group might realize that I'm not upholding the expectations that they had on me and then shame me and leave me, and I'll be disconnected and won't survive based on my association to my childhood. But it's like totally the force that people feel. And I love that. And I think uh, a really easy metaphor as well is breakups. And I love the quote, intuition always serves every party involved. I just really like that quote that I made up. That is like, if you break up with somebody, it all like most of the time when the person who is deciding to break up with the other person is thinking about it, they're really nervous of letting the other person down. But if it's intuitive, it's only going to help that person have more growth and expansion and a more full life. Because if you're in it and it goes against intuition and you stay in it, you know, you're resenting them or whatever. And you don't know what, like you could dump someone and then they literally within 3 weeks find like someone that treats them way better in alignment with what their values and needs in a relationship are. But it's like a lot of the time we're just so nervous of trying to control the hidden order, the divine plan, where you can't. And like this is something I've struggled with massively because I've I've felt really need like, because growing up in an unsafe environment, I felt the need to control things. And also in that environment, a strategy that I used to stay safe was to be nice. So people like me, so they wouldn't hurt me because of the abuse and stuff. It's like, then I've, you know, tried to not disappoint people. And in that pursuit of, and with that real strong need to try to be liked, have struggled to make calls that would go against what other people had already planned, and then kind of like blocked the hidden order, whatever. So, man, I feel like this is so valuable, this conversation, like it's sick. But just to like really fucking nail this point, if you're listening to this right now, if you have the desire to go start some business and you haven't started it yet, it's like you could start it and fail at it and you're just serving everyone. Like that, starting and failing it is serving everyone. If you're in a relationship, you literally in your heart know that's not right, you're like serving people by leaving it. You might give someone else the courage to leave their relationship where they're being physically abused in it, and then they leave it, and then you meet the dream person, your ex-partner meets a dream person. It's like just giving yourself permission to try and fail and be okay that if you try and fail. Because I said it to a client a couple of days ago. I was like, she's got a brand where she runs an osteo clinic, and she's stepping into business coaching for osteos and practitioners. She's like, I'm this hidden force of adhering to peers' expectations thing. She was like, oh, but people don't see me that way. I don't feel like I've got a good perception as like a physio. And I was like, I mean, as an osteo, like going into doing this other coaching, people don't see me that way. And I was like, yeah, I'm aware of that. And I completely lost my train of thought here. It's like, if she, yeah, it was like, who gives a shit if she, no, I said to her, if you view me, like you've seen me start and do things, drop things, do things, drop things, do like start things, not finish them, change my ideas heaps over the last 3 months. Have you personally judged me, or do you look down at me at all for any of those things? And she's like, no, of course she wouldn't. Like, why would she look down at me? But then she's got a massive judgment on herself for the same fucking scenarios. And everyone's the same. No one else gives a fuck about what other people are doing with their changing careers, changing uni courses. But in our head, it's just like, fuck, I'm changing uni course again. It's like as if everyone else is just like flicking on the TV and just watching your wife full time going, fuck, she better not change uni course. No one gives a shit. It's an important point to recognize. No one gives a shit. If there's like a group photo taken and there's like 50 people in it, and you're like, fuck, I wonder how I'm going to be seen. No one looks at that group photo and looks at you. They look straight at themselves first, because everyone's living their own fucking crazy reality with the same fears that they're going to be judged for changing shit and being authentic.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, fuck.
Totally. And, you know, I think that another thing, just to make sure that people don't, you know, misinterpret what we're saying here, is that there are natural consequences of things that you do, but then you just need to handle them. Like if you start a new business and you have a few, you know, clients, and then you decide to shut down that business, you need to be, you know, if you want to be someone who is in integrity, if that's who you choose to be, then you will probably refund those clients or come up with a different deal to kind of fulfill on what they paid for, or do a partial refund and then, you know, you maybe of what you haven't fulfilled on. Or if you want to be in integrity, you're going to find a solution. If you want to express yourself as a thief or as a charlatan or as a fraud,
particularly charlatan,
then you'll handle it differently. But that's the thing, is that, again, you get to choose. Are you going to be in integrity? Are you going to be a charlatan? Or are you going to be
charlatan? Who introduced this word? Who was it originally?
Tony Robbins. He did it. That's who I first heard it. Put it on Tony Robbins.
Charlotte.
Or, you know, maybe you decide to be even beyond, you know, integrity, and maybe you decide to like overgive. Like you can decide however you want to respond to any change in, you know, a decision that you make or whatever. Or, you know, and there are some people that the way they handle it is they don't even publicly acknowledge to anyone that they've changed. And they just like, some people just go ghost. They move country and they start a new life. Like you can handle things however you want to be. But remember, it all comes down to how you see yourself. And if you're in alignment with how you see yourself, then you're going to be, you know, in your authentic space and you're going to be fulfilled. Hey, there's one other thing, Ryan, that I want to clarify, which is, you know, this conversation around, you know, the strongest force in the human personality is the need to remain consistent with how we define ourselves. I want to just kind of like acknowledge the fact that that's talking about the human personality, and personality is essentially another word for ego, or how we, you know, define ourselves and box ourselves essentially. So that's important because we are spiritual beings living a human experience, and within the human experience, we have personality, we have certain ego traits, we have certain, you know, preferences and things that we don't like and whatnot. It's important as spiritual, you know, conscious people that we acknowledge that that is true. Like maybe there are certain foods that you like and dislike, or certain behavior traits that you prefer or not. But that it's important to acknowledge that that is our ego, our personality, our way of defining ourselves and categorizing ourselves. And when people hear the word ego, they think it's a bad thing. Ego is essentially the way that you define who you are. And I think people get kind of get caught up in like, he's got a big ego. Like, what does that mean? It means that he is very certain about the way he categorizes himself, and maybe he categorizes himself as confident, and then other people judge that because he's out there being like, I'm all confident, and then the person hearing that is like not as confident, and maybe they desire confidence, and it's like a subconscious like resistance because they're not embodying that trait, but they want to, or whatever. But I want to acknowledge though that all this conversation is about how we choose to define who we are, which is essentially like choosing our ego and our personality. But I want people to realize that there is a broader context beyond that, which is the realm of, spirituality and the fact that we are all part of one godly energy, which is love. And the ultimate truth of who we all are is God, is love. And then outside of that, we might decide to be like, still maintain the identity of I am love, but then express it in a certain way through our ego. But it's important to realize that even if you decide you are a successful business person and you're a healthy, vegan and this and that, musician, however you define yourself, I think it's important, if you want to have a, higher spiritual perspective, that ultimately what you really truly are in your essence is love. And if you can bring that through everything that you do in your ego expression and your personality expression, that's what I've found to be the fulfilling balance of being a human. Is like, I'm aware that I am God and I am love, and I choose to channel that and express that through marketing and through just my expression of my beliefs and my wisdom, and through my connection with my partner and my friends and my family and whatnot. And when it's disconnected from that awareness that you are God and you are love, I feel like it can feel less meaningful. It can feel less connected. That's at least been my experience. So I want to encourage people to have those two minds. You are God and you are love, and you are also a unique expression of that in the way that you show up with your personality and your ego.
Yeah, totally, man. And that makes it a lot easier to shape shift, essentially, like shift your ego and choose who you want to be, because you ultimately know that you've got a pretty big safety net behind the whole thing, which is that you are oneness and you are love, and that's the truth of who you are. So if you change the identity on the surface, it's not as big of a deal, because you can be a little bit more lighthearted about the human experience, because your self-worth is not found purely in the control of that identity and needing to stay completely stuck within it to feel good. Because that was my experience. Like when I was choosing my identity to be a successful businessman, I was so attached to that identity because I believed that that was all that there was. I didn't understand that other aspect of the godliness and the love and the spirit and the soul. It was like, no, I am the business identity. So if the business changes and that identity gets compromised, I feel mega unsafe. And I was super attached to that because it was where I found certainty. I didn't find certainty in the understanding and the knowing that I am love. So I think that what have you done to be able to, or for me, meditation's been super helpful in developing that surrendered knowing that I am love. What have you done to help with that?
Yeah, so I've done a few things, and I think the thing that has probably helped me the most on this journey has been, spiritual ceremonies, which, sometimes have been facilitated with psychedelics and sometimes without, and in a frequency that resonates with me, that, I would consider as quite rare, like a rare frequency, but, everyone has their own, decision about how frequent they would explore with things like that. But other than that, like that was really like the unveiling. The very first time it was, a few years ago, that was the unveiling of like, you are you are part of oneness. You are God just through a different expression. This energy is love, etc. And then since then, it's just like being in an environment of consuming content, being surrounded by other people that also have that awareness, where you can just on a day-to-day basis kind of reference that awareness. Like when we were living together, Ryan, we had this whole inside kind of joke thing that we are like, we had a group chat with our, like me, Ryan's ex-partner Danny, and my partner Carolina, where our group chat was called Four Parts of God, and it still is. And whenever we would communicate something, we would sometimes just make fun with it, because it's funny to be a human and have simultaneous awareness that you are God and you are also a human. So we would say things like, I am the unique expression of God that right now desires this. And it's like, rather than saying like, someone's like, what do you guys want to do tonight? Rather than being like, oh, let's watch a movie. If you just like anchor into your like life, things like, I am the unique expression of God that now decides I want to watch a movie, it kind of anchors that awareness. So for me, it's been spiritual ceremonies, a few times throughout the year. And then on top of that, just like having a daily and like a consistent anchoring of that awareness. And that has really helped me
what
to
that does,
be aware of
that creates the awareness without the attachment, right? Because if you're like, I'm a part of God that's desiring to watch a movie tonight, and you say that to everyone, you know that you are a character in this movie that we call life on earth, and that's your desire, and that's, you're like stepping on stage and saying your first line for that scene, but then
Yeah.
but you're a character, and then someone else could be like, well, my desire is to rebut you and say that I want to go for a walk instead. And then I'm like, well, my desire is to come in and just like provoke you both to get into an argument. It's like one big play, but you can do it with that playfulness because you're observing it as a witness with awareness, not an attached.
Yeah.
But you could also choose, this is the funny part, like what we're talking about with emotion at the start. You could be going crazy and simultaneously be aware that you're choosing to go crazy. So you could really want to play it.
Yeah.
You could be like, no, I want to play into the role of someone that really wants to watch the movie. And I'm actually going to like get pissed off if you guys don't adhere to what I want. And that's the role that I want to play in this moment. But you're doing it with a lighthearted edge.
Yeah. And I actually love kind of towing that edge sometimes as well. Like, before I moved to Poland, and before we, separated our living arrangement altogether, we also had another roommate, Shane, and me and Shane had quite different beliefs about certain things. And I would love just creating drama by like purposely saying things that maybe I like 80% believe, or like maybe I don't even have a grounded like perspective on my perspective on like what I actually believe, but I would just throw something into the conversation to create drama, because I admit I enjoy drama. Like I just enjoy it. Someone might enjoy music or sport or whatever. I also have other desires, but one of my things that I enjoy in like a relating experience with friends is just to create drama. And I like to do it in a respectful way where there's no like anger or violence or low vibes, but I like to be playful with it, where I'll throw something into the conversation to just spike the emotion and make it fun. And that's what I encourage people to do, is just like honor like what you desire and just like unapologetically like be that and have fun with it. Because, we're here, we've got a certain amount of time on, in this human experience before we, transcend to go somewhere else or to reincarnate or whatever might happen. But while we're here, we may as well enjoy our experience. And how are we going to enjoy it? Through awareness of what we enjoy, and then creating that, and then also being open for things to happen in a way that we perceive are even greater and more fun and enjoyable than we could possibly create it on our own. So yeah.
That's funny. With the Shane. Shane was literally there to create drama. That was like his role. And he's actually the least like dramatic person, because he's like in the category of the person that feels less and is more neutral. But his existence just being different to like how like there were four of us that were kind of similar, and then there was Shane essentially. And so Shane just being there stirred up so much humor. Oh man,
Yeah, and I loved having Shane there. Like, and yeah, because like Shane served a purpose in all of our lives of creating because Shane also co-created all of these experiences. And we created experiences for Shane that would have been also interesting and in the realm of like I see Shane as part of the like universe that made our experience living together even better than I could have originally kind of thought of, because all
Yeah,
of those experiences with Shane there are different than what they would have been if he hadn't have been there. And I happen to enjoy them probably more than I think I would have had he not been there. And I hope and I believe that we were the same for him, that, you know, he got a whole bunch of
definitely.
variety in his experience of life that he would not have gotten if we weren't there. So yeah, Shane, I love you if you're listening to this.
Yeah. Um, that's so true though, because it comes back down to that movie idea that if you're watching a movie and it's just what you expect, then it's boring. No one wants to watch a movie. That's why like I hate watching trailers, because then I kind of know what's going to happen, and then I'm watching it and I'm kind of like knowing what's going to happen, and it's less exciting because it's just what I expect. Whereas like when something else gets thrown in the mix, you know, I think I feel like people like to act in the drama of everything. But then if you took the drama away, they'd just complain about the fact that there's no drama. Like people are like, this is such bullshit that we have to do this and this and this. But if it was completely clean and everything happened exactly how they wanted, there would be no life. It'd just be so fucking boring. And it's easy for us to say in a fun convo like this, but you know, sometimes we get triggered and we're like, fuck, we wanted it to go like this, but it's gone differently and we're all angry about it. But you know,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful frame. It's like a beautiful reframe. Man, let's wrap up here. But before we do, I'd love to do an activity that I think is like a really special thing that you and I often do, that I think we have, well, I know that we have such a special bromance, like relationship as friends. And I'm going to put it out there. I've never met any other friends that have a relationship that is as awesome as ours, in the sense of the depth of connection and the trust and the safety. And so
Mm.
one thing that we often do that I would love to encourage and invite other people to do, and we'll do it on here now because that's just what we're going to create, is just like honoring of each other. And Ricky and I do this all the time, where we literally just take some time to just like look at each other and just honor and elevate the qualities that we admire and respect in the other person. And it's just so awesome. It feels really nice to give it. It feels really nice to receive it. And it can be like sometimes a little bit, well, for me at least, like sometimes I'm like, oh, it's a little bit nerve wracking or whatever to receive this. But then as I'm receiving it, I kind of like relax a bit and I really take it on board, and it expands the depth of connection and makes our relationship even more special every time we do it. And so let's do that, man. But before we do, let's finish on that. Before we do, I'd love to ask you a question, and before I ask that question, just leaving cliffhangers here. What is there anywhere that you'd like to direct people, man, off this podcast? Because I know we're doing this to jam less than you've got an intention from it to get people to go somewhere. But would you like to invite people to like email you or go to your social media or something like that?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, if I would love if someone listened to this and they wanted to kind of share with me what their biggest takeaway was, or to just, you know, continue the conversation from here. I'd love to, yeah, just see who's up for connecting and seeing what happens from that. I mean, maybe I'll make a new friend from that. Maybe I'll make a new business partner from that.
Maybe
Maybe there'll
someone
be
that listening is an island dealer and they happen to have an island that they're giving away. They send
exactly.
you an
So
email.
so I'm going to say I'm open to any reciprocity of my desires to flow my way in whatever way that might manifest. It might even just be a conversation. So if anyone does want to reach out, they can just find me on Facebook, just my personal Facebook profile, and connect. It's Ricky Baldasso, RICKY, and then BALDASSO. And just, yeah, send me a friend request, send me a message, and we can have, we can start a conversation. So that's what I would invite anyone to do that feels compelled to reach out and connect.
Such a low key way to connect, because you don't do a lot of podcasts. You're like, yeah, does that mean as a friend on Facebook? It's like the most chilled way that I've ever heard.
Well, dude, I want to actually say one final thing before we get into the
Yeah,
honoring,
go.
which is that, one of my close friends, James Hepburn, I once was on a Skype call with a marketer, Mitch Miller, and I just remember at the end of the call, like he was helping me with some marketing, and then at the end of the call, I was just like, "Hey, man, do you know any marketers in Australia that I should connect with?" And then he's like, oh yeah, this guy, James Hepburn. And then literally I got off the call and I just sent James a voice message on Facebook. It's like, hey man, I was chatting to Mitch. He said that we could connect because you're in Australia, whatever. Then a few weeks later, I met him at a convention, a marketing convention in Sydney. And then since then, we've been really great friends. And it was actually him that it was James that I was walking on Chapel Street with the time where I met Brett, whose event I went to, where I met my partner, Carolina. So you never know what's going to happen from connecting. Yeah. So maybe if you reach out to me, somehow that'll lead you down a path where you meet the future mother of your kids, or your future business partner that you build a business with, that you sell, that then buys you an island. You never know what's going to happen. So I encourage people to reach out and see what path of manifestation it takes you and I down.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. So I'm going to ask you a question, and then we'll do honoring, and then we'll have our friends catch up after, which we've got planned after this. So, man, random person that you don't know anything about, even their gender, comes to you with a briefcase, and they're wearing like a balaclava, so you can't even see them. And they say, I'm going to give you this $1 million. And because I'm really wanting to invest in your greatest piece of wisdom that you have. And so all I want is for you to tell me the thing that you think is the most valuable that you know in exchange for this $1 million. What would be the most valuable piece of advice that you could give anyone?
It would be that it's a few things built into one kind of concept. And the concept is that what we talked about, that you are God, you are love, and your desires are God's desires. And you have been selected, or you can select yourself to be the one to manifest those desires. Just like anyone that manifests anything, the richest person in the world, Tony Robbins, whoever you look up to, there was a point in time where they decided, I am the creator. This is what I want to create. I am worthy, and I am selecting myself to be the most worthy human to experience this intention of God, this desire of God. And then they went out and made it happen. So you are God, you are love. Go out there and create whatever you desire, because it's God's desire. And everyone, all parts of the universe that are parts of God, are encouraging you and supporting you to make that happen. And you can change that at any time, transform that, but everyone is supporting you, and you are God and you are love.
That was so beautiful.
So can I have my $1 million now?
Yeah. It's in the briefcase under your seat.
That'll get me 10% towards my island.
Beautiful, man. So let's do this honoring, and I'm really excited for this. And so I just wanted to, this is often what Ricky and I do before we chat. We just set intentions for what we want to create. So let's just close our eyes and set some intentions to, I'm setting the intention right now for us to be really present and really authentic and meaningful in the honoring and the compliments that we give to each other. We put any insecurities to the side. We open up the ability to receive and to give at the highest level. And yeah, that's it. Would you like to add to that as an intention, bro?
Yeah, I'd like to set the intention to be, for us to demonstrate to other people the level of honor that you can give and receive to your friends, which can ultimately create a really deep connection and a lot of trust and love and support.
Beautiful, man. When you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes, and let's just authentically roll. Ricky.
Yes.
Man, I want to honor you for what a fucking weapon you showed up as on this podcast today. You don't even do podcast interviews, and you can adopt the new identity if you choose.
I actually was on one a few days ago, a marketing one. But yes, now I am on podcast. I'm an expert podcast person to interview or whatever you'd call
Man,
that.
well, you came on this interview today and you fucking tore this to shreds. Like your ability to articulate and just take and do it in such a heart-centered way and such an authentic way that's just really is just who you are. Exactly the same off this interview and off camera is what you are, and you have been on this today. And it's, man, like you're just a fucking you're such a weapon. And I love how you can do that in a way that's really humble, where I know you love the recognition, but you know, you're able to just come on here and have this experience. And in the dynamic of our friendship, I really appreciate that you know that you play this role. And often we have conversations and I'm at this stage, the more public facing kind of figure. And then we have all these wisdom sessions. And then I just take the concepts that we talk about and contribute it out to the world. But I really love that we have that special connection. And yeah, man, I just want to honor you for that.
Thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate that.
Pleasure.
I want to honor you, Ryan, for being an incredible example of like probably everything we talked about today. Like, and being so open to like being an example as well, and like sharing like legitimate examples that have already happened or that might happen. Like when you're like, you know, this TV show, I don't know if I'm going to do it or not. Like in live time, having the self-love and the vulnerability and like the like transcending fear and being such a leader to just be like in real time explaining that and also acknowledging how far you've come, because we've known each other for a long time. And you know, you mentioned that in your previous business that you often didn't want to commit to anything that you felt like you couldn't like fully follow through on, or that would potentially, you were quite aware about how people would perceive you. And you've just come so far, and you've been such a great example of like probably everything we spoke about today. And I just want to honor you for that. And also, I want to honor you for being such an incredible like host. I felt like so. I felt like you really gave me the space to share my authenticity and to kind of express what I wanted to. And then you also added some incredible like examples and wisdom, and we co-created something amazing here today that I'm going to listen to this podcast. The podcast I did the other day, whilst I enjoyed it, it was more about marketing and like less about, you know, the things that I think are closer to my heart. And like I enjoyed it and I added a lot of value, but it's kind of, this is the kind of podcast that I would listen to, and I would like to remind myself about what we talked about. And yeah, and I just want to honor you for doing such an incredible job of hosting this today.
Thanks, man. Receive that. I want to honor you for being the part of God that is willing to listen back to these podcasts. And if we ever do psychedelic experiences, listen back to our recordings and bring those nuggets out of it to create these beautiful, because I know you're going to re-listen to this and then it's going to come up in conversation heaps, these little points that we spoke about.
Yeah.
So thanks for being willing to do that. But I want to honor you, man, for being someone that's like so open and so willing to surrender to again, it's the role model and epitomization of what you were talking about before, with surrendering to something being more amazing than what it is that you ultimately desire. And so, and the way I'm going to point this thing out is your pants that you're wearing right now. Can you get up and show the people your pants?
Sure.
So Ricky's just got these hippie pants, right? It's like mega, like it's up until this point in time, it's nowhere even remotely close to the sort of pants that he would wear. When I first met Ricky, he was always dressed up in these hardcore power suits. And it's just like, you're so willing and open to surrender to these new, beautiful experiences. And I think your relationship is such a, and I'm going to go on an honoring rant here, but you've gone into this relationship and you've opened yourself up to receive so many new gifts, which you have opened up. Like me in previous relationships, when I've been with people that are different, And I'm making the identity to say that I'm the sort of person that enters relationships now and fully surrenders to the gifts of how other people are unique and different. But you taught me that, because even like when you came into the dynamic with Danny and I, we started living together, you really saw her for her uniqueness, where I often judged it because it was different to me and therefore I found it threatening. And so like the way that you've showed up in your relationship and given Carolina the space to guide you guys to these new experiences that you never would have had before is so awesome. Because for those that are listening, Ricky um, just was mega focused on his business before he met Caro, wasn't really into spirituality much at all. And now he's like a hardcore spiritual, like gangster, like really embodies it and lives with so much sacredness in his life and so much spirituality and so much soul and spirit, because he was open to surrendering, because you were open to surrendering to Caro. And Caro is also biggest values and personality type is like socializing heaps and having these crazy like adventures in traveling and exploring cities, which very like it's the opposite of you, because you're a coaster and kind of just like do your thing and have been into business naturally. And now you're the sort of person that does that stuff because you're so open to learning and just having different experiences. Like you are a massive yes person. And I often just like whenever, and this is a funny thing actually, because at Winning International, you were always just showing up at whatever it was. It was like all winning team members plus Ricky. It's like, because you would just say yes to any experiences. It's the team's trip to the snow. Everyone's there and Ricky. Because you're just willing to, so open and willing. So I just want to honor you for that, man.
Thank you, man. That was such a great. Oh, that was so awesome to receive that. Thank you.
Pleasure.
I actually want to. I'm going to honor you more, but I want to say one other thing that I think is going to be of value to people is that I enjoy receiving compliments and like just like I enjoy my friends saying nice things to me, and like that's just the truth. So that means that we can create experiences like this that meet my desire for that. I feel like a lot of people feel awkward receiving, but when you receive that, man, it feels good. It reinforces like your idea of who you are, which can be very positive and create confidence and whatever. So I want to encourage people to do what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to jump more into honoring you.
Thanks, man.
One thing I want to honor you for, Ryan, is how much of a leader you are in just like all ways. I feel like you have like a presence about you where when there are people in a room, it is like you can feel your energy because you radiate with so much like love and care for people. And when you first meet people, like something you've really inspired me with is I've been caught in the pattern a lot in my life where when I meet someone, I'm just like, oh, hey, I'm Ricky. But I really notice that you bring your love and your energy to just meeting someone for the first time, or if, when we're catching up with friends, like I can really feel your love and I can feel it radiate. And I know that everyone else can feel that, that support and encouragement and the love and connection and everything. So I want to honor you for that. And I want to honor you for being such an incredible leader. And, if I look at, my journey and our journey as friends, I really feel like you have led the way with a lot of things, which has enabled me to benefit and to become more of who I am. And some examples of that are, initially when we met, literally the day after we met, we went to your office at the time and you offered that I could work out of your office. And I wanted to work out of an office and you happened to have an office, and it was like a perfect, co-creation. And then since then there was another office that we moved into and it was your company plus Ricky. And then there was a third office we moved into, your company plus Ricky. And I just want to like honor you for being a leader, and because it wasn't just being a leader, it was having the courage and taking like the risk component of that, because it was always your lease and I was just like paying my share of the rent. I never had to be up for like a big like lease or long-term contract. I could, and I did it at times just like bail for like, a month or whatever, or like I just was never on the line, and I had this flexibility which really like benefited my lifestyle. But I know that it wouldn't have been possible without you having the courage and the leadership um, to make all of that happen. So I want to acknowledge you for that. And even recently, when we we're living together, like, you were up for the what's it called, the lease and the bond and everything. And I was just, me and Carol were just in there short term, paying like for our room for however many weeks we were there. And I just feel like so much magic has been created in both of our lives from you having that leadership and that courage to take on risk and to just embrace things. And yeah, it's really transformed my life in many ways. And I know it's also simultaneously made your life uh, interesting and fun and exciting and full of growth. So I just want to acknowledge you and honor you for all of that.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Sometimes I forget those traits in myself around being a leader in a room. Sometimes I kind of feel like I'm walking into a room and anyway, I'm not going to deflect this, but bottom line is that means a lot, man. I really appreciate that.
You're
Man,
welcome.
I want to honor you, Rick, for being someone that genuinely has other people's best interest in mind. It's really rare that someone has enough self-love and enough fullness in themselves that they legitimately want the best for other people and don't feel threatened or competitive or uh, don't feel like that the other person's success would take away from anything to do with who you are. And I feel like everyone that you come into contact with, when you meet them, there's just so much natural love that radiates from you. And there's this encouragement and desire for them to thrive at a high level. And it just comes from this beautiful place of love. And I think that's such a rare thing to have. And I just really want to honor you for that, bro.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
I've got another one, Rick.
Cool.
Man, I want to honor you, and it's a piggybacking off that last one, but I really want to honor you for being such an incredible boyfriend. Like you are such an amazing leader in your relationship, and part of that, and that leadership comes across lots of different categories. Part of it is actually allowing yourself to be led sometimes, but the way that you show up as a leader in a relationship, from my opinion, is the fact that you are really unconditionally loving and you're able to see the truth of your partner and speak so highly of her and make her feel so seen and so loved and so appreciated and so safe and comfortable because she knows that being with you, that you love her for who she is. And there's literally nothing that she could do that would have you look down upon her because of what you were talking about earlier in the chat with you don't categorize her and identify with her behavior. And that for me is like, there's that's really amazing for me that I really get to benefit from. But there's also seeing the quality of your relationship is what has inspired me to like feel the possibility of what I can create in my next relationship. And as you're obviously aware, we chatted on the day that I made the decision to move forward from my last relationship. And it was because, like, a big part of that was because of how embodied and amazing what it is that you've created in your relationship with Caro is, because of how willing you are to stand up strong when you need to set boundaries and, like, be authentic and honor yourself, surrender and humble and apologize and not take things personally, be willing to talk things through, be willing to express your emotions, be willing to help her with her business when it's time, and also choose to do the opposite at times as well. Like, you really are an incredible example of what it means to be an amazing partner in a relationship. And I've got so much inspiration from that. And I'm really grateful that I've got you in my corner when it comes to even the dating phase that I'm in at the moment. And when I get into my next relationship, knowing that I've got your support and you to look up to as a role model in that area, it's really, really comforting, man. So yeah, I just want to honor you for that.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Yeah, Kara has taught me a lot, and I receive that I fully receive that, but I also want to acknowledge that Caro has co-created a lot of those qualities and a lot of the things we talked about today. As much as I'd love to take full credit for it, and I
Yeah.
trust me, I will take as much credit as I can. But I want to also simultaneously acknowledge Caro for
Yeah.
her for her contribution in my life, and she really was the one that like woke me up and helped me have a spiritual awakening. And we've been on the journey the whole time together, and I know that her fueling me with love has really opened my heart and allowed me to be more of who I am. So thank you, though. I really appreciate that.
Pleasure,
um
man.
and I'll
Do you
go
have
back
any?
with one.
You gonna
Yeah,
go
I'm gonna
back
go
with
back
one?
with, yeah, with one
Let's
more.
wrap up on this point, and I'm gonna receive this
Okay.
to the fullness.
Ryan, you are incredibly handsome.
Thanks, man. And for those that are listening, um, Ricky is the only man that I've kissed on the lips, and I think it's important that all the listeners understand this. We're in a plant medicine ceremony, and there was actually a previous ceremony where I had attempted to kiss Ricky on the lips, and it made him uncomfortable. And then in this next ceremony, he'd warmed to the idea, and he actually instigated the kiss on the lips to me. Which
What? That
yeah,
does not sound right. I
no,
did
it
not
was
remember
in the
that.
mushroom strip.
I did not remember that. But look, if that's what you say was true, then I believe that that's what was true. From your perspective, I still don't believe that.
See what happens when your authentic self comes out in the next trip. So good. But thank you for that, man. I really received that compliment.
Sure.
Beautiful. Well, those that are listening, that was real. Like I really felt all of that, and that was a beautiful honoring. And this is what Ricky and I do regularly when we have chats, and they don't always happen in like a clean format like that. Sometimes we just go off on crazy rants, and we give ourselves space because we were honoring each other there. But what we will also do when we chat is sometimes we'll take that and say, yeah, thanks for that. And I'm going to build on it. And then we like rant for ourselves and honor ourselves as well. And then entwine that throughout it, which really gives us the opportunity to own what the other person is saying. So yeah, man, that was beautiful. So dude, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I intend to have many. This is my favorite podcast, very definitely biased, my favorite podcast episode to date. So hence why it's gone for over, I think, almost 2.5 hours. Oh shit. It's gone for ages, and it's been so awesome, and I intend to have you back on heaps and to do more of these, man. So love you, brother, and thanks for coming on today.
Cool. Love you too, man. Thanks so much for this.